Edition of ABC 24 on 24 Plus. I'm Pepper Baker. Now we have some breaking news here from earlier today, as now both the Tennessee House and Senate have passed a bill that will allow the state of Tennessee to oversee Memphis-Shelby County schools. Earlier today, House Bill 0662 passed through the Senate with a 26-6 vote. And it also passed through the House with a 63-30 vote. The latest version of the bill includes key provisions from Representative Mark White. Now, that provision would allow the state to open up an oversight board for MSCS. They will have control over things like budgets, contracts, and school facilities. The board will consist of 9 Shelby County residents appointed by the governor and other state and local officials. That board will also have the authority to veto school board budgets and even remove school district leaders and board members if necessary. Now, until today, there were actually 2 competing versions of the bill, but the one that ended up passing allows the city and county mayor to appoint a member of that board, while other versions left it all up to the state. And joining me here in studio today to talk to us about this recent legislation is Dr. Kenneth Whalum Jr. Reverend Whalum, thank you so much for joining us. Now, we knew this legislation was going to move through the Capitol pretty quickly. Just your initial thoughts right off the top. How do you feel? Is this good or is this bad?
I think it's a great thing for the children. Not such a great thing for the politicians and elite who are sort of trying to put their thumbs on the scales. I don't think it's a win yet, but it sets the stage for a win. I think we should remember, Pepper, how we got here. How we got here was the school board, in spite of the repeated warnings from the state, decided to improperly terminate the contract of Dr. Fagans. And that's what set this in motion. This would not have happened had the school board refrained from taking the action that they took.
Do you think they regret the way they handled that now?
Oh, you know, I don't think they do, especially the more vocal ones, the 6 who voted in spite of clear evidence that they shouldn't have done it. I don't think they regret it. I don't think they will regret it until there are more severe consequences for their actions. But we cannot overstress that we have the support of the General Assembly involving themselves in trying to improve educational outcomes for our children. And nobody can argue that our school system has been successful. Nobody can argue that. I would argue that anybody who is determined to oppose state intervention, what they're really saying is, well, we want to all drown. Well, don't rescue us from a sinking Titanic. We want everybody to drown together. We don't want any lifeboats. And I think that's sad. But again, I think it's an opportunity for a win. It's going to be very important to see how the people now respond to that.
So the biggest point here is this oversight committee, and it's made up of 9 Shelby County residents that will be appointed by lawmakers. But break it down a little bit for stakeholders of the district here, parents, students, staff. What does it mean to have a loss of local control?
Well, I don't think it is a loss of local control, especially if you recall, again, the circus around how we got here. Most of the community were saying, don't fire the superintendent. They're the ones who wanted to control the situation. A few people, 6 to be exact, decided that they would take control from the people. So I don't think it's a loss of control. I think it's a restoration of local control. And remember, Pepper, we've got a lawsuit from Dr. Fagans that is still active. The deposition process is still going on. And we've got demonstrable evidence that the things that they accused Dr. Fagans of have all been disproven. The allegations against her have all been disproven. So we've got those 2 things that are operating in connection with this new opportunity to get things right for our children, and I think we're going to do that.
And this committee will oversee budgets, school facilities, contracts, and that goes a little bit beyond students and staff. So we're talking about people who are business partners with the district. So what does this mean for the local economy?
Well, what it's going to do eventually is level the playing field. Remember also, we've got a forensic audit, maybe $4 million. I've heard some estimates $3 million, some as much as $6 million, that's going to go to the bottom line of all of the past contracts and all of the present contracts. What I think that's going to do is shake it out, eliminate some some stuff that shouldn't be in the budget and identify if the contracts are really being abided by with the vendors. I think that's going to be important in terms of local economy. Once that settles down, the school system will at least have a better idea of what funds they have and how they need to spend the funds that they have. And I cannot overstress the fact that the state legislature, the General Assembly, is really doing what those 6 school board members should have been doing all the time, and that is making the main thing, graduation rates, reading proficiency, and that kind of, I think it's going to be a good thing.
Yes, but those long-time business partnerships are going to be upset, those owners that have those partnerships in place.
So what should happen now is the community leaders who have been vocal about their opposition to the things that are going wrong in the school system, they need to get ready to open their own schools, private schools, charter schools, and be happy that the money is being accounted for. I think that's a good thing. And I would ask those elected officials, particularly those Black and Democrat elected officials, now that the bill has passed, are you going to step up, work with the General Assembly, and make sure our children are properly educated? That's the challenge.
Okay, and so moving a little bit on to just more of a breakdown of these versions, because you talk about local leaders. The 2 versions, House Representative Mark White had more of the state's handling over this oversight committee, with a breakdown of just keeping the appointed committee members in the lawmakers' hands, whereas Senator Brent Taylor's version will have at least 2 members appointed by the county and city mayor. How much of a difference does that make?
It depends on who the appointees are. But the fact that the local appointees are all going to be residents of Memphis and Shelby County is going to do a lot toward making sure that the people's interests are being observed. If every person who's appointed is a Memphian or Shelby Countyan, nobody really has an excuse to oppose that unless they have political or economic interests in maintaining a status quo. I think that the people who are watching this should pay very close attention at who's being appointed, and they can determine for themselves what kind of record these appointees have in the Memphis and Shelby County community. I think it's an important opportunity for us to get a win. Again, it's not a win, but it's an opportunity for us to get a win.
Okay, so you touched on this before, but you know, if I'm a parent, if I'm a student, staff member, business owner, just should I be worried? Is this good, bad?
I don't think you should be worried at all. I think the only people that should be worried are those who have been hiding behind positions within central office. I think the only people that should be worried are those moneyed, is a term I use, moneyed political elite who've been used to pulling strings and making decisions through the decision makers. They should be worried. I think that if Governor Lee and the General Assembly are serious about improving educational outcomes for Memphis and Shelby County, you shouldn't be worried at all. You should breathe a sigh of relief, because what we're going to see, if it works out the way I think is going to work out, is that 3rd graders are going to start to be able to read on 3rd grade level, and graduates are going to be such that they can get gainful employment in our community. And that is not just education, that's economic as well. So again, I would say there's nothing to worry about unless your personal interests have been maintained by the status quo, which is a failing status quo. But people who have children in the system and want their children to succeed should not worry, but should be vigilant and watch what's going on and listen to the people who are taking whatever position they're taking.
Now, you were a former school board member, and so when we talk about this current school board, they will be acting in more of this kind of advisory role.
Ceremonial, whatever. Pepper, this school board lost their credibility, not just with me, but with the public. The 3 members who did not vote to terminate Dr. Fagan's contract, initially, they were pristine. They were perfect in terms of their integrity and the way they looked in the public. But then when they stood with the 6 against the state intervention that everybody knew was coming, they set themselves up to be grouped with those who voted improperly. And so it is what it is. They're not going to lose their jobs. They're not going to lose their school board salaries. I think, and I don't know if they would admit to this publicly, but I think they're relieved that this state intervention has come in to interrupt the circus that has been caused by the 6 who voted improperly to terminate the superintendent.
We'll see if they will continue to be as vocal on Facebook as we have seen in the past.
Maybe not.
Now, the next step now, it will, so just a small correction, the 2 versions will now go to an appointed conference committee that will then decide on which one. Which one do you think has more of a chance of passing?
The one I think has more of a chance of passing is the one backed by Representative White.
Okay.
Because he's the one that's been working on it the longest in his position as chairman of the Education Committee for the House of Representatives. But Senator Taylor's outlook as a senator informs the process. You can't do it without Senate approval. So I think it really is going to be a compromise. And I think the bottom line is that the 6 who voted to terminate the superintendent are going to have to deal with the consequences of that decision. And I really believe that no matter which version has more weight, I really think that the educational outcomes for the children is going to improve.
Okay. Wow. And so eventually one version will make it to Governor Bill Lee's desk. We were able to ask him what he thought about it about 1 or 2 weeks ago when he came to Memphis to visit a private school. Here's what he had to say.
Because the status quo has not worked, and something needs to happen for these children. And I care deeply about the future of Memphis and Shelby County and the next generation of Memphians. It needs to move in the right direction. There are a lot of things happening in Memphis that are really positive. We're seeing, we've put a real emphasis on working together with the mayor on issues of crime, on issues of education. We have to continue to move Memphis forward. The next generation is key. So something ought to be done. I'm interested in all the proposals that are coming, and we'll see which ones make it through the legislature.
Okay, so we're hearing Governor Bill Lee saying that he somewhat of support, saying that the status quo hasn't been working. They've worked with the mayor before on crime issues and education. He's interested in hearing the proposals and seeing which one will move Memphis forward. What do you take from his response?
I think he's sincere in his statements that he's interested in the educational outcomes of Memphis and Shelby County. As the largest county, the most densely populated in terms of minority, blacks and Hispanics, I think he's serious about that. I think the economy of the state depends upon the educational outcomes of Memphis and Shelby County. So I agree with him. I'm glad to hear him say it. And I am really, really happy that the state had the courage, because they had to overcome some real vocal opposition. Kudos to Representative White, kudos to Senator Taylor in having the courage to carry the ball and carry it across the finish line. But again, we have an opportunity to win. I don't think we win yet, but I think we have an opportunity to win, which we would not have had those 2 not had the courage to press in.
Now, we are talking about the largest school district in Tennessee. That's quite a hefty budget. I know there are a lot of people concerned out there about the governor having his hands on where that money will go. Do you truly believe it will go in the best interest of Memphis Shelby County students?
Oh, I think so, especially because the 9 people, if it ends up being 9, are all locally appointed. That's a very, very important key. The people who are appointed will have demonstrated courage in the face of public withering opposition sometimes. And I think perhaps those, hopefully those who are appointed will have demonstrated an interest in children. That's what's going to carry the day. I think that's going to happen.
Okay, well, a lot still remains to be seen. There's so much more that will come from this. We'll be watching closely. Thank you so much for joining us, Reverend Whalum. We always appreciate you being here.
You're welcome, no problem.
All right, so once again, House Bill 0662 passed in the Tennessee House and Senate earlier today. That bill seeks to open up an oversight board for Memphis Shelby County schools that will oversee operations at MSCS. Well, we thank you all for joining us here on special edition of ABC 24 News. Check back in with us later today for the news at 5 and 6. You can also catch continued coverage as well as our latest stories and more content on our 24+ stream, available online and on Roku, where you can download the app and watch for free today. Thank you for watching.